There's an empire on Earth that has 2.5 million citizens for every single human. It's an empire of ants. Their territories span continents. Their armies wage total war. They invented farming, antibiotics, and complex social networks millions of years before we did. But here's the secret to their astonishing success, and the puzzle that has fascinated biologists for decades. No one is in charge. And the answer to this puzzle lies in a choice evolution made 140 million years ago. Evolution abandoned the very idea of the individual self, a concept that had driven life since the beginning. And in its place, it gave rise to a cooperative force unlike any other on Earth, the superorganism. To understand how this happened, we have to go back to the basics of life, natural selection. For eons, the formula was simple. An individual organism competes, survives, reproduces, and passes on its genes. You live or you die, you leave offspring, or you don't. The individual is the vessel upon which evolution acts. But around 140 million years ago, ancient ants found a loophole. The idea was as simple as it was radical. What if the individual didn't have to be the one that reproduces? This was the dawn of what scientists call eusociality, and it represents one of the major transitions in the history of life, possibly as significant as the leap from single-celled organisms to multicellular ones. Think about your own body. You are a cooperative of trillions of cells. Most of them, your skin cells, your muscle cells, your neurons, will never reproduce. They are what's called somatic cells. Their only job is to work, support, and to ultimately die, all in service of a tiny protected fraction of cells, the germline, your reproductive cells. These are what will actually pass your DNA to the next generation of cells. Ants stumbled upon the same division of labor. They pioneered a way for the colony itself to become the organism, just as the trillions of cells in your body collectively become the singular entity you call yourself. A queen becomes the germline, the sole reproductive organ. The vast majority of her offspring, all sterile female workers, would become the soma. They are the working machinery of a new, larger entity, the colony itself. And with this change, natural selection no longer acts on the individual ant. It acts on the colony as a whole. An individual worker ant can die, and millions do. But as long as the colony survives and reproduces, its genes are passed on. Once this path was taken, it became evolutionarily irreversible. The individual was gone, subsumed into the whole. And this is where a principle called emergence takes over. This new entity displays properties that none of its individual parts possess. A single ant is simple, acting only on basic rules. A colony, however, can solve complex problems, form a collective memory, and wage strategic war. We'll get to how they do this soon. But this is emergence, the magic that happens when simple individuals, following simple rules, create a complex and borderline intelligent whole. It's the same principle that the cells in your own body follow, like your immune system. A decentralized army of billions of individual cells collectively learn, adapt, and defend your body without a single command. So how does a superorganism reproduce? For most of the year, a colony produces only sterile female workers, but once a year, it changes its entire focus, creating new winged queens and males, its reproductive future. On a warm, humid day, these winged ants from countless nests fly out to mate. For the males, this is their only purpose. After this single act, they fall to the ground and die. But for the newly mated queens, the true challenge begins, founding a new colony, a new superorganism. In harsh environments where a lone queen would almost certainly fail, they resort to a temporary and brutal alliance. Multiple queens will cooperate to found a single nest, pooling their resources to raise a large workforce much faster. For a while, it's perfect cooperation. But once that first generation of workers matures, the alliance is over. And unlike in human conflicts, it's not the queens who fight for the throne. The workers themselves make the decision. They begin to neglect the weaker queens, judged by chemical signals and the number of offspring they produce. Then they carry out the sentence, swarming and tearing the losers to pieces. The executed royalty are then fed to the larva of the single remaining victor. The superorganism has pruned itself, choosing the strongest genetics for its future. The decision wasn't made by a leader, it emerged from the collective. For millions of years, these new superorganisms grew, diversified, and spread, but their true ascent to global dominance was shaped by planetary catastrophe and a series of key innovations. We all know the story. Around 66 million years ago, an asteroid struck the Earth, triggering a mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs and 3/4 of all life on the planet. The world above burned, then froze in an ashy winter. For most larger surface-dwelling creatures, it was the end. But for the ants, safe in their subterranean fortresses, it was an opportunity. One theory holds that this apocalypse was the catalyst for their greatest innovation. A group of ants in what is now South America made a breakthrough that humans wouldn't make for 60 million years. They stopped simply hunting and gathering. They started farming. These were the ancestors of today's leafcutter ants, and their method was ingenious. You've probably seen the images and videos of ants carrying leaves, but they don't eat the leaves they carry back to their nests. They are not herbivores, they are expert horticulturalists. Inside their vast underground chambers, the smaller workers take the leaf fragments, chew them into a pulpy compost, and carefully weave this paste into a sprawling, sponge-like garden. They've even figured out they can fertilize it with their own feces. On this meticulously prepared substrate, they cultivate a specific type of fungus. This fungus, and only this fungus, is the sole food source for the entire colony. You might even be able to say that these ants were the first to domesticate a life form. The varieties of fungus they cultivate can no longer survive in the wild. They depend entirely on the ants, and the ants, in turn, are utterly dependent on their crop, no longer able to survive without it. To protect their precious food source, they have even evolved a second symbiotic relationship. Leafcutter ants carry bacteria on their bodies that produce potent antibiotics, which they use to meticulously weed their gardens, killing off any invasive molds or hostile fungi. If a forager brings back a leaf that proves toxic to the garden, the colony learns, and a chemical message spreads: do not touch that plant again. It sometimes doesn't even matter if all the ants are dead from the first generation who figured this out. The memory can persist for many months. An example of the superorganism forming a collective memory and a perfect example of emergence in action. This agricultural revolution gave them a stable, controllable food supply in a world of chaos, allowing them to build colossal societies. A single mature leafcutter colony can harbor millions of individuals, a testament to the power of farming. They had secured their foundation. Next, they needed to connect it. A superorganism, like any organism, needs a nervous system. It needs a way to transmit information, to coordinate millions of independent parts into a single functional whole. Ants achieve this by mastering the language of chemistry. They speak in scents, using a complex vocabulary of pheromones. This chemical language is the software that runs the colony. Every colony has its own unique scent profile. a hydrocarbon signature on their cuticles that acts as a sort of passport. Or maybe you could even consider it the name of the superorganism. An ant can instantly recognize the scent of a nestmate versus an intruder with the same certainty that your immune system recognizes its own cells. But their communication goes far beyond just signaling their own name. A crushed ant releases an alarm pheromone, a chemical scream that sends nearby nestmates into an attack frenzy. Some species even deploy a form of propaganda, releasing misleading pheromones that trick enemy ants into fighting each other. But one of their most stunning systems is analogous to the protocol that runs the internet, TCP/IP. The fundamental problem of any large network is preventing traffic jams. The internet solves this with a simple feedback loop. It doesn't just blindly blast out information in one large piece. It breaks it up and sends a small packet of data and listens for the echo, an acknowledgement that it arrived. The faster the echo returns, the more packets of data it sends. A delay means congestion, so it automatically throttles back. Harvester ants evolved the exact same solution to the exact same problem, preventing a wasteful traffic jam of foragers. You can think of an ant leaving the nest as the small data packet. An ant returning with food is the acknowledgement echo. The rate at which these echoes return to the nest directly tells the colony how much traffic the route can support. A high return rate opens the floodgates. A slow return rate throttles the workforce back to a trickle. It's a decentralized biological algorithm for managing network traffic. Another perfect example of emergent intelligence solving a complex problem without a central planner. Scientists even have a name for it, the Internet. Perhaps the most stunning example of this chemical language comes from African weaver ants. They can release a mixture of 4 different chemicals from various glands in a specific sequence to issue a complex command. These 4 chemicals roughly translate to the following. The first means be alert. The second means search for the source. The third, come closer, I've found it. And the fourth means attack. And the amount they release itself can convey different meanings. This, at its core, is a very simple version of a sentence. It's a series of distinct ideas combined to convey a complex multi-step instruction. So ants have agriculture providing the energy and chemical communication providing the coordination. Ant societies began to grow even more exponentially, and with growth came conflict. Just like in human history, for an ant colony, warfare is a constant part of existence. As these superorganisms expanded, they inevitably collided with their neighbors, leading to a planet-spanning 100 million year arms race. As you can probably guess by now, this isn't just dumb individual ants fighting for no reason with no strategy. Through emergence, these superorganisms have evolved a form of unconscious intelligence. They've perfected the strategies of total war, logistics, and self-sacrifice. Some species even evolved ritualized combat, where champions fight one-on-one, allowing colonies to gauge each other's strengths without risking a full-scale, mutually destructive battle. But this isn't always the case. For many, war is absolute. Wood ant wars can last for days, with vast armies withdrawing at nightfall only to return to the same battlefield the next morning to resume the slaughter. This constant warfare drove the evolution of ever more sophisticated strategies. Some species, like the Amazon ant, even keep slaves. It's just truly insane how many parallels a creature that weighs just milligrams have with human society, good and evil. These Amazon ant warriors have become so specialized for fighting, with sickle-shaped mandibles perfect for piercing armor, but useless for digging or feeding, that they have lost the ability to care for their own young, or even feed themselves. Their survival depends entirely on raiding the nests of other ant species, stealing their pupae, and bringing them back to their own nest. When these captured ants emerge as adults, they are chemically imprinted with the scent of the slave maker's colony. They are deceived into believing they are home and spend their entire lives as an enslaved workforce, foraging, excavating, and feeding their masters. And in a tragic irony, these slaves will even participate in future raids, helping to enslave members of their own species. Yet this is not a story of perfect domination. Researchers have observed quiet acts of rebellion. Enslaved workers have been seen systematically killing the pupae of their masters, turning on the next generation of slave makers. But just as war drives offense, it also drives defense. The most successful military strategies aren't just about killing the enemy, but also about preserving your own forces. Among the most remarkable examples are the Matabele ants of Africa, who specialize in raiding termite nests. These raids are dangerous, and many ants are injured, losing legs or antennae to the powerful termite soldiers. But the Matabele ants don't abandon their wounded. They've evolved a system of battlefield medicine that is unparalleled. After a raid, designated medics will search the battlefield and carry their injured sisters back to the nest. There, other workers act as nurses, carefully cleaning their wounds by licking them, applying antimicrobial saliva that prevents infection. This simple act of healthcare is astonishingly effective. An injured ant left on the battlefield might have about a 20% chance of survival. An ant that receives this care can have that boosted to about a 90% chance. And they can tell the difference between a lightly injured ant and one that is fatally wounded. They ignore the most grievous cases, who often signal their own condition, as if to say, don't waste the resources on me. It is a collective decision to focus care where it will most benefit the whole. And for some, the ultimate strategy is the ultimate sacrifice. The exploding ant of Southeast Asia has a specialized caste of workers whose bodies are filled with a toxic, sticky yellow goo. When faced with an unbeatable enemy, these workers can rupture their own abdominal muscles, spraying this chemical weapon over their attacker, killing them both in a final, desperate act of defense. This is the logic of the superorganism taken to its absolute extreme. The individual ant is just a cell. It can be a farmer, a chemical messenger, a soldier, a slave, or sacrifice itself to save the colony. But evolutionarily, its life has no value outside of its function to the whole. The result of these innovations is a global dominance that is difficult to overstate. The numbers are so vast they become abstract. Today, the total global population of ants is estimated to be 20 million billion, aka 20 quadrillion. That's a 20 followed by 15 zeros. Like I stated in the intro, for each human on Earth, there are approximately 2.5 million ants. Their sheer mass is just as staggering. If you were to put all the ants on the planet onto a giant scale, their combined weight would exceed that of all wild birds and all wild mammals combined. They have colonized every continent except Antarctica, thriving in nearly every terrestrial ecosystem, from the driest deserts to the wettest rainforests. Alongside humans, they are unquestionably one of the most dominant animals on the planet. But to truly understand what this dominance looks like, you have to meet one final species, the Argentine ant. Native to the floodplains of Argentina, this unremarkable looking little brown ant was accidentally introduced to the United States in the late 19th century. From there, it spread, but it did something no one expected. In their native land, different Argentine ant colonies are fiercely territorial and fight brutal wars. But the colonies founded across the globe all seem to have descended from the same small introductory population. Due to the lack of genetic diversity, they lost the ability to recognize each other as foreign. They all carry the same passport scent, the same name. The result was the birth of a monster. Instead of fighting, the colonies merged. Nests linked up with other nests, forming a sprawling cooperative network. This network grew into a super colony, and the super colony grew into a mega colony. Today, the largest of these is a single cooperative unit of Argentine ants that stretches roughly 3,800 miles or 6,000 kilometers along the Mediterranean coast of Europe, from Italy to Spain. Another massive one covers most of California. A third dominates large parts of Japan. For years, scientists thought of these as 3 separate colossal supercolonies, but then they've performed a simple experiment. They took an ant from a nest in Spain and placed it in a nest in California. It was not attacked. It was not treated as an intruder. It was groomed, fed, and accepted as a nestmate. They repeated the experiment with ants from Japan and got the same result. The shocking conclusion was that these are not separate colonies. They are all part of a single global megacolony, a single global superorganism. An ant from Europe, one from North America, and one from Asia all recognize each other as self. It might be a little bit of a stretch, but you could consider this global megacolony as the single largest organism on Earth. This is the only cooperative unit in the animal kingdom documented to span multiple continents, paralleled only by human society. But it is fundamentally different. It is not an alliance of nations. It is a geographic expansion of a single continuous organism. This is the culmination of that first bargain made 140 million years ago. By giving up the individual self, they created an entity that can exist in multiple places at once, a near immortal, globe-spanning creature whose body is the collective of trillions of ants. The first civilization wasn't human. It was built on a different answer to the most basic question: what is a self? For us, the answer is one body, one mind. For them, it became the colony. A self so powerful and perfectly replicated, it built a global empire long before ours even began.